Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Terraria series. Today we're going to learn how to procedurally generate gems, with the most important gems going towards the bottom and the weakest gems at the top. What I've done is to demonstrate this is I've turned the light system off and I've zoomed out just so you can see the procedural generation. Without this it's harder to see, so it's just demonstration purposes. In the full game, of course, we're going to zoom back in and put the light source back on. So in the previous tutorial I said that I'm going to make a safe space for the player to land on, because technically this space could all be empty. We don't want the player just to fall, we want to make sure that there's a platform at all times. So I'm going to go 6 across, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here onwards we're going to have 4 blocks across and 2 blocks down. This way the player will always be on top, so we'll move the player over to this area. I'm going to paint in those blocks. The procedural generation is going to overwrite then we're going to paint them back in code. I'm just painting them in here as a preview. We don't really need them there, but it's just good to know where the player is going to sit. So we're going to move our player across. Now that player's positioned, we're going to go to the tile map code. Then we're going to go down to the generate level. What this is doing is it's generating mud blocks and empty blocks. So we want to go down after the generation is complete, and we'll paste the code down here. So we're going to do a for loop, and we're going to go through the for loop 4 times. So it's going to be 0 to 4, so it's actually 5. Then we're going to set the cell, which is set in the tile, where the position is X, which is at 6. Then we're going to add in the I, and then it'll be on row 0, and we'll set it to 0, which is the first mud block. And then we'll do the same again, but instead of row 0 it'll be row 1. This will paint 10 tiles, and this will be our safety platform. Now we're going to generate a new tile set. This is a bit tedious, so bear with me. We're going to go to new scene, make a 2D scene. I'm going to call this tiles, go to 2D, then I'm going to add a node. I'm going to make it a sprite node and call this 0. I'm going to then make sure that the mud 0 is on the texture. I'm then going to add a static body, then the collision shape 2D. On the shape I'm going to make sure it's a rectangle, and then I'm going to position the rectangle over the sprite. Now I'm going to go to 0 and I'm going to select this icon up here, which groups the children together so I don't accidentally select the wrong one. I can minimize this now so I don't really need that. I'm going to position this here, and then I'm going to press Control D, move across, Control D, move across, Control D, move across. Lastly, Control D, move across. Now I'm going to match up the mud blocks. So you might be asking, why have I done this? Why are we making a new one? Well, I've been having bugs with making a new tile set, or extending the tile set, I should say. And I find it's easy to make a new one. One thing I didn't realise is it'll list the tile in alphabetical order, which I didn't want, so it's putting the mud at the below gems, for example, and it just caused a headache. So I realised using 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. would actually keep the ID, and it's much easier to read an ID than trying to work it out by counting it. So now we'll sort the gems out. So I've created 5 sets of gems, and I'll add them to the tiles now. This will be in the project and the link will be in the description below. You'll notice these gems are in a sprite sheet. That's okay. What we do is use regional, and this is actually quicker than you might think, and I'll demonstrate this now. So we're going to highlight 0 to 4. We're going to press Control D and we're going to drag them down. Then we go to region. We're actually going to enable this. It looked like they're disappearing, don't worry, we'll fix that later. We're then going to move our blue gem across to the sprite, making sure they're all selected. Then we're going to go to the width is 8, 8. Now you'll see the first gem is already done for us, but we're going to go to the second gem. We go to the region. We know it's going to start from 8. Then to the third gem, back to the region, it's going to be 16. Then to the fourth gem, the region, it's going to be 24. And finally the last gem, to the region, it's going to be 32. Now the great thing about this is we don't have to mess around with regions again. We can just copy and paste all this. So now I can just highlight them. So press Control D, drag them down, and I'll say green will be the next one. Drag it in, and as you can see it's updated. We didn't have to mess around with regions. This is much quicker, so I can do Control D again. Let's make ruby red the third best. Control D again. Gold is second. D again, and finally diamond. So now we're going to press Control S, and I'm actually going to overwrite the tile set tiles. Save that, over it. Then we're going to go to the scene, we're going to go to convert, tile set, and I'm going to call mine resources tress. Ignore the default for now, we might delete that a bit later. Save that. We're going to go back to the main project, we're going to go to main, we're going to load, tile set, resources, open. So now you can see we've got our new gems in here. And the great thing about this is I can now easily find that, oh, our starting diamond is going to be 25. Our starting gold is 20, so on, so on. We're now going to edit the procedural generation to include the gems. So we're going to need to go to the tile map and the script. We have two Perlin noises. One is for the level generation and one is for the gems on top. The gems are going to be spawned in a different way than mud would be. We will need a separate Perlin noise for that. Mine is noise gems, open simplex equals open simplex new. So now that we've got two noise textures, it's going to be a bit messy to have it all running and ready. So I'm going to separate them. So I'm going to copy and paste over this, don't worry. We have init noise and init noise gems. So obviously these two procedures need putting in, so we'll do this now, and I'll put them down here. So this is just the same as the thing we've just copied and pasted over, and this is new. The reason I've used these values is it gives an impression of a vein of ores, sort of like how you'd find gemstones. What I'll do is I'll put these values into an open simplex noise texture so we can see them visually, and I'll do this now. So you can potentially see these as a vein of ores. Now the weird thing about this is the other simplex noise texture we use for the mud won't be there, so we don't want to paint gems onto invisibles. We want to paint it onto mud. So what we'll have to do in the code is say, is there a mud block here where we would have pasted a gem? If there is, then we can place a gem into there. This way it stops having these weird lines going through caverns, which wouldn't make any sense. Now we've generated the noise textures, just generate the level. We want to generate the gems on top of this level. Then we can create that procedure down below under generate level. So like above, I want to go through every potential cell we're going to do, which is 200 by 200. So you can imagine this doing a column by column rather than a row by row. I'm going to make sure that the current tile we're looking at is mud. So if get cell, which is the tile we want to look at, is x in y coordinates is not equal to -1, then it has to be a block. We're going to get a percentage of how far down we are in the generation. And to do that, we make a new variable called %. I'm going to make sure it's an int. And the reason for this is you can get 0.5s. We don't want that. It's then vital that we convert our y to a float. We divide it by converting our max y to a float, and then we times it by 100, which is just a way of getting a percentage from a maximum number. To visualize that, I'll use a calculator. Let's say 100 divided by 200 equals 0.5. We then times that by 100. And therefore we've got 50%. The great thing about this, if you decide to change the level size later on here, it won't matter, this will always work. We then make another variable, gem ID, and this will be used later to determine how far down we are, what's the percentage chance of getting a decent gem, and then pasting it into the tile. I'm going to check if the percentage is in a range from 0 to 20, so anything within the 20% upper range, we're going to check that if a random range from 0 to 5 is greater than 0.05, which is 95%, we're then going to make sure that the gem ID is 5, which if we look back at our tiles, we know 5 is the starter gem. So this means that most likely we're going to get quite a weak gem, but there's a 5% chance we're going to get a little bit of a better one. This way it's not just spamming really boring gems, it kind of gives you like something to aim for. And I kind of do this all the way to 100%, so I'll just put that in now. 21% to 40, 41 to 60, all the way to 100. So from onwards you can see I've just copied and pasted this, I've just changed the percentages, so eventually all the way to 100. And each one I kind of mess around with the values to determine which gem to place. And right at the end you can see we've got a 20% chance of getting a diamond if you're in last 20% of the game. So if you're right near the bottom, there's a 20% chance of seeing a diamond if a gem is spawned. You can mess around with these values, you can add to it. It's really quite simple. It was just a demonstration of how to increase gem value as you go down. And lastly, we've got a gem ID now, so it can't be anything other than 5 to 25. So we need to put that into the tile by pasting this code here. And what this does is we check that the get noise 2D of the image, so if the X and Y coordinates of the simplex noise image is brighter than say 0.5, so that'd be quite a bit of a greyish colour, we're going to set the cell XY of the tile map to the gem ID we've just generated. Now in Part3 I've just learned that we're going to do this code for every single piece of mud, even though there's maybe not a chance that we need to, right? So I'm going to edit the code, bear with me. So I'm going to cut this, I'm going to go to the top, so I'm going to say just cut this for a moment. So ideally, you really want to cut this code out when we're not using it. So I'd say that if the get noise is greater than 0.5, then yeah, sure, run this code. So I can just highlight this code and press tab. Then right at the bottom, we know that 100% we're putting this in, so that's not, we can paste this code, so set cell. So once again, we get the X and Y coordinate of the tile we're currently looking at, and we apply the gem. I'm just going to make sure this is working. So we can see we've got really weak tiles at the top. I'm going to drop off. Yeah, we can see that they get a little bit stronger. I'll drop off again. They should be getting stronger. Yes, they are. So it should always go to about white. So I can see some white here. It should be white next layer. Oops. Brilliant. So this will be a lot more optimized than the previous way. So one issue we'll have, you'll notice, if I try to hit a gem, well, it won't really know that exists, because right now we're saying if it's more than 4, there's no gems there, so ignore it. So as you can see, we can't really interact with this. So that's what we'll work on next. And to do that, we're going to go to the axe script. So find your axe script, and we're going to locate hit block at the bottom here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy and paste over this. So, and I'll explain the code then. So what we're going to do is we're going to check that the ID of the block that we're currently hitting is not -1, because that's nothing. And if it isn't, then we've hit a block. Then we're going to check the ID in this array. Now these values are the very last block of that current gem. So we kind of want to remove them after that. And then in a later tutorial, I'm going to tell you how we're going to add in a score system, or maybe we'll spawn some gems like in Minecraft. You can spawn blocks when you hit them and then you can collect them. If you've got any suggestions on what you'd like to see here, whether you'd like it just to add a tally in like a counter, or if you'd like to spawn a gem and then collect it, please let me know down in the comments. I'd be happy to hear it. Then we remove the block, else if it's our block but it doesn't exist in the last stage, we can increase the ID of the block. This will increase the ID, which will then increase the sprite, which gives the effect of the block finally breaking down. Then after we've increased the block ID, we get the cell at the coordinates, and then we apply the new ID. So we've got some nice blocks in a little bit of a vein here. And as you can see, you can hit them, they move. We should also check on the more expensive blocks further down. So let's get this red one. Brilliant. And one last thing I'd like to do, because it's a bit jittery, the camera, is just edit the smoothness. Let's see how this looks. Now I think that's a little bit better. We should turn the light back on, because obviously we can see the blocks in the distance. But before that, I'm going to zoom out and just see the generation. So we're going to go to the camera. I'm actually going to say 2. And let's press play, see how this looks. So you can see the generation when you really smoothed out, it's almost like a cut-off line. I've tried to give some percentages so you can see some blocks up here. This is more rare, so you could just do it 50-50 so they'd slowly blend, but I'll leave that with you. Also, I like my caverns a little bit bigger than this because I like having fall damage, so I'll probably change that in a future tutorial as well. So let's put it back to how the game should look. Go back to the camera, 0.3 for the zooms. We'll turn the canvas modulator back on, press play. There we go. And these are safe blocks as well, so they're always going to be there. So you can see there's actually quite a lot of resources in big bulks. We might not want that, or you might want it, but if you want to change that, there's some values you could change. So in your generate gems, so we could change this number from 0.5 to 7, and that would make the gems appear more rarely. For now, I'm just going to leave it as 5 because it's good for testing purposes. Well, that concludes the end of this tutorial. In the next one, I'm going to do some particle effects when you hit the blocks. I'm also thinking about doing a level system. So, for example, for gold gems, you would need, like, say, an axe. Like in Minecraft, you need to have a diamond axe to get obsidian. I guess we could put that into the game. Also, the main feature of Part 4 is going to be building. So I want to get resources where we can actually just build a little bit of a hut, and hopefully in the future we'll add some AI. It'll be simple AI where it'll be roaming, so left, right, it might be able to jump, it'll certainly be able to drop, and it will just try to follow the player. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.